If you've clicked on this video, it's for one of two reasons. Number one, the thumbnail and title were rife with the appropriate words and just clickbaity enough to get you in here. Or two, you're trying to settle the age-old debate going on in your mind of should or shouldn't I use a HUD when playing online poker. So I want to take the next 7.5 minutes of your time explaining a fresh perspective on this debate and hopefully unlock some things that will allow you to print the most EV in your games. So before we dive in, my name is Joshua J and this is Joshua J Poker, and I'm documenting my journey from the micros to the highest stakes I can and sharing things I find useful along the way. So if that sounds like it's for you and you want free EV, please consider liking and subscribing to stay up to date. So let's begin. And I want to start off this debate and this topic by offering two statements which I really believe to be true. The first one is, live poker is where the most EV is, other than liking and subscribing to this channel, baby. But if you think about it, there's drunk whales, there's regs who believe jacks are impossible to play, and there's, for the most part, a pretty friendly rake structure which lead to live poker being infinitely easier than online. And I've never met any high stakes players who don't agree that live is easier than online. And if you agree that the goal of a winning poker player is to win the most money, then live is where that will be achieved the easiest. So therefore I want to give you this mantra: online for show and live for dough. And if we can accept that live poker is going to be our big money maker long term, it will influence how we approach HUDs when we look to online poker. So the second statement that I want to introduce is keeping the online poker ecosystem healthy is the number one priority and should be the number one priority. So if you drove to the Serengeti and you just saw buffalo, it would be pretty weird. Equally, if you only saw tigers, you'd be a little bit confused. Unless your name was Joe Exotic, then you'd be nursing a little Tim Henman. The beauty of nature is the diversity, and online poker is absolutely no different. So too many strong regulars and everybody is losing to rake, and too many weaker players, whilst it may sound good, long term it becomes an unethical bloodbath, and we lose the challenge of what makes this game so beautiful, and the challenge that it gives us will be gone. So just like in nature, maintaining the ecosystem should be the number one priority, and to make the games enjoyable for those who are playing for fun and keep the games profitable for those that are taking things a little bit more seriously. So if we don't prioritize this, it'll be like the burning of the Amazon. A beautiful thing will be ruined by the greed of man. So again, if you accept this statement to be true, it will change how we view HUDs going forward. Now I've laid the foundations to this argument, let's add some flesh to the bones. So if we can agree that live is where the bank is and that's where we're going to make the most money, why do we not focus on cultivating those live skills? And you can't use a HUD live unless you've somehow got access to Charlie Carroll's AI cameras, which I don't really think exists, but it means that you're going to need to rely on different skills to win in the live arena. Those skills being pattern recognition. So what are my opponents doing? The second one, extrapolation of data. So what do known actions indicate about future unknown actions? And intuition. So based on what I know and what I believe I know, what should I do? A HUD kind of does most of those for you, or at least creates a little bit of reliance, and you don't think that way. So why would you bother to focus on player tendencies when you have the information given to you? You know, like why would you bother to learn how to extrapolate data when at a few clicks of a button you have all the information that you need? And why would you bother to focus fully when the software does it for you? So therefore, if you use a HUD, you will learn certain skills, but they will be in the context of having a HUD. And you can't have that HUD live, so why would you bother learning it in that context? Another key point in this argument against HUDs in the context of live being the focus is the need for immediate EV versus understanding long-term EV. So like, yes, being told somebody's C-bet frequency and percent can be very useful, as are a lot of other HUD stats obviously, but players that rely on these things are focused on immediate EV, and that being decisions generated from more accurate information that I have right now. When you zoom in on a decision, it's obviously better to have as much information as possible, so your immediate EV may actually in fact be higher, so people build their strategies around having that information via a HUD. But this is quick to ignore the fact of long-term EV of like poker sites banning HUDs, like, which is happening more and more, by the way. So what happens when the HUDs are gone? Like, what's going to happen? You know, does your strategy completely change? And we're also quick to ignore that the EV versus a live player at higher stakes is going to be infinitely more. So in my opinion, it's sensible to future-proof your EV and give up a little bit right now with the intention of winning more long-term. So the next point I'd like to make against HUDs is the loss of focus of what truly matters. And I remember when I used a HUD, I'd be so focused on learning really abstract things like what should I do versus a 37% turn check raise, or I'd like to focus on really niche things like what do I do against a 21-12-3 guy. And all of this was being fueled by forum chat and training videos, obviously. But what this led me to was having a very unfocused and leaky strategy. My fundamentals were all over the place, but at least I knew what the correct c-bet frequency was. And I see this happen time and time again, and things like that we justify like, oh, but the villain was playing 35-15, and once I replaced my need for statistical justification and understanding that playing solid fundamentals was better, I started to win more and I started to move up stakes. And I guess it's a case of too much of anything can make you sick, and having thousands of data points at your reach at the click of a button is an example of that. And this brings me nicely onto the next point against HUDs. So there's enormous hidden EV in being excited to play, and I remember that when I had a HUD, I'd be so focused on it during the game that I'd lose sight of having fun when playing, and I'd be consumed by all the colours and the numbers. And when I stopped using it, I started to become more excited to play the game again, as it became me versus villain and not me versus numbers. And this alone has so much EV because an excited player turns up more consistently and plays on average way better than people that aren't excited to play. So you can't lose sight of that, longer term EV of actually just being excited to play. So they're the first few points in relation to live poker, and now I want to look at HUDs potentially impacting the poker ecosystem. So from my perspective, a new player seeing a HUD and understanding and hearing about a HUD will fall somewhere on this scale. So at one end of the scale, there's going to be people who are super excited by the concept of HUDs, and they will be the go-getter type, and they really want to become the best that they can be at things, and they're usually going to be winning players. But on the other end of the scale, there will be people who are absolutely devastated that HUDs exist, and they will feel cheated, upset, annoyed that they need this thing to win, and this will result in them finding a different game to play for fun. So in my estimations, and this again is just my opinion, the weighting of this scale will lean more towards those who find a HUD a turn-off. So there's going to be more people over that side, and if that is true, and because obviously I said it, it kind of is, but I do believe it to be true, it results in HUDs discouraging more people to deposit and play online. And this over time leads to an ecosystem where there's just more regular players, and there's more rakeback grinders, and there's the very, very rare recreational players. So that way of doing things in that ecosystem isn't very sustainable. And this ties in nicely to the immediate versus long-term EV, because using a HUD may make you more immediate EV, but if it turns new people away, which I really think it does for the most part, it ends up costing you way more money long term because there's less recreational players in the game. These are my points against using a HUD, and as for points like pro HUD, if I'm honest, I haven't to date heard any arguments that support having an on-table HUD that I think outweigh the points that I've already made. But I'm obviously open to having my mind changed, so please comment on anything that you want, like any points that you'd like to make, please comment them below. And I do, however, 100% agree that hand history should be made available for self-analysis, and that process is obviously uploading those hands to softwares like PokerTrack 4 or Hold'em Manager, because if we don't have that option, we're all just playing blind and we don't really know where we need to improve, and that's not good for the longevity of the game or the ecosystem either. So I do agree with that point, but there are my thoughts on HUDs and their impact in the game, and I'm not saying I'm the oracle, and I just encourage you to do whatever you feel best doing. But if you've never played without a HUD, for example, I would highly recommend trying it and just seeing how those different skills develop. And if you've got anything that you'd like to comment or add to this debate and keep this conversation going, please post them below. And if you found value or clarity here, please consider liking and subscribing. And I'd really appreciate that. Helps support myself and the channel. And with that said, and without further ado, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Go out there and see what HUDs do for you. Much love. See you next time. Peace.